Well, hi, and welcome to my nervous BAKEDOWN. I am sat in my pyjamas on a Monday. This was familiar for a really long time and then absolutely was not, so it feels odd to be back in it. I'm coming to you from my reading week. The weekend was full of activity. I went to a wrestling show, I did a podcast, and only now on this Monday have I had time to sit down and be like, right, okay, reflection. So I thought I would share with you some of my reflections on 6 weeks of actually training to be an actor. 6 weeks of being fully back to school, all guns blazing, after all this time away from the education system, all this time of... I mean, being a freelancer should help you with independent study. Spoiler, it hasn't. Kind of really investigate where I'm at, how I'm doing, how it's been, and see if any of you feel a certain type of way. Because I think a lot of the things that I've been journaling about and noting over the past 6 weeks are not specific to musical theatre. They're kind of general things that we all go through in life. It's not even necessarily that linked to being in education again. I think brains are fascinating, and the stories we tell ourselves, especially when you are card-carrying neurotic like I am. Reflection is so important to make sure you're making time for in order to counterbalance those stories we tell ourselves. We'll get into it. But first, what am I baking, you wonder? Well, I needed something quick because I didn't have much time, but my classmate was going off into surgery and I wanted them to have a nice little treat as a send-off. But I didn't have time to go shopping, so I needed a tray bake situation with ingredients I mostly already had in the house. Blondies. Let's talk about Blondies. I didn't think of myself as a Blondie person. I think I made a batch of Blondies about a decade ago, and I simply didn't like them. I thought they were just boring. They were just like, well, brownies have something about them. These Blondies, maybe the recipe was just bad, but they were just nothing. So I've cast about looking for a better recipe, and I've settled on this one. It's from Preppy Kitchen. It's an American recipe, so I've kind of taken some liberties with it. But let me tell you, if this is what Blondies are supposed to taste like, the past decade of my life has been a waste. I've been walking around planet Earth believing that Blondies are a complete vacuous mess. Turns out, caramel toffee sweet goodness. Now I can't wait to play with the recipe. I've already come up with my first, what would I call it, Blondie variation, which is the name of a Debbie Harry tribute act. But there's plenty of time for that in the future. At present, we're just making your standard Blondie. In the meantime, let's talk about what's happened, because I went on such a journey over the past 6 weeks. Starting it, the very first class was a dance class that I just did not vibe with. Halfway through, we took a quick break to have some water, and I just looked at my classmate and was like, this is a no from me, Diva. I wasn't getting the steps, I wasn't understanding what we were doing, I was out of shape, quite frankly. It really kicked my ass. And then over the course of about 2-3 weeks, I noticed that I was being able to do things better. I felt that kind of improvement, which was really interesting and is a testament to continued practice. Or so I thought, because I've just found some notes that I was making to myself in the middle of one of my classes. And it is interesting that I write things down where I have picked up nothing, I am very bad at this, how am I ever going to stand in an audition room? All of that stuff is in there. Because towards the end of the 6 weeks, I definitely started feeling it. Maybe it's because I wasn't taking as conscious care of myself. Maybe I wasn't drinking enough water. Maybe I wasn't nourishing myself in the right way. I don't know. Maybe it was just that I was tired. But my entire left side felt so tight. You know that thing where they're like, you're using muscles that you haven't used in years. And in that case, I'm like, well, why bother them? They're clearly not that useful. But standing in ballet and holding your arms in a certain way, you have to, like, you're cuddling the audience is what it is. Every ballet movement is about welcoming the audience into the space because it comes from mind. There's a whole lineage about it, which I listened to and found fascinating, but I would butcher if I shared it with you. So just trust me, you're trying to hug the audience. So your arms can't be out, they have to be up. But that means you have to balance your core so that you can stretch, which means that my back muscles in the middle of my back, just under where the back of my ribs are. Goodness gracious, those feel quite painful at the moment. Then yeah, my entire left side. I realized I sit into my left hip a lot, and it feels like all dance is based on the left. So there's a lot of tightness in the hip. In the past couple of days, I've had a chance to relax. I've been to the sauna a couple of times. And by the sort of last couple of lessons of week 6, I really felt like I wasn't able to do the things that I had been learning and getting better at over the past several weeks, which was so frustrating because we are assessed on like performance and how we're picking things up, and we're in constant conversation with the teachers. So like I told them that I was having this feeling and they were aware of that, and you know, they're remembering where I was in week 1 and everything that I've done. It's not just this one moment, it's the whole 6 weeks and how much attention I paid, how committed I am to the learning. All of that stuff is being taken into account. But I just sort of got in my head and I was like, oh mate, if you can't handle these 6 weeks, how are you going to handle a career of this? Do you know? It's just not fair to say to myself that I've picked nothing up, though, is it? Because clearly I have, and clearly I have made a massive improvement. I think I feel it in my energy and my outlook, even if on that one particular day, my muscles were a bit tighter than they were the day before. I think maybe I just thought I would magically be, like, good overnight, or if it was all inherent within me and all it needed were a couple of classes to unlock it, and then I'd be like, bam, pas de bourrée, pas de bourrée. I still don't even know what a pas de bourrée actually is. I'm pretty sure I've done several. I couldn't point one out. I couldn't pick one out of a lineup. 6 weeks feels like ages at the beginning of it. And then at the end of it, you're like, wow, where did that time go? So if I think about it from that place, if I take this time to reflect a little bit, I'm like, God, that was no time at all. So think about all of the things that you've done and think about all the things that you've learned, all of the experiences you've had, all the things you've put yourself through. Then I've done fantastically. But I think at the beginning of the 6 weeks, I was like, God, come November, I could walk into a chorus line. Reader, this simply will not be happening. And like, maybe I have noticed a humongous improvement though, because sometimes I sing to myself and I feel my voice is different. And like I said, sometimes the day that you're in might have different feelings for you. You might have woken up a bit tight that day and you have to do an extra bit of work. Or the converse is true, you're just having a really good vocal day. And I definitely feel like I've noticed an improvement. The classmates in our singing rep classes, the teachers keep telling me they see an improvement. Even when I'm singing to myself while I'm walking around outside, I'm feeling that I am placing my voice in a different way. So clearly this practice has been worth it. And that's why this week, while I'm not technically in class, I need to keep on top of it. Because I'm fairly certain that if you don't maintain the practice, it's so easy to slump right back to week one. And I think that's another thing I need to pay attention to. This is going to be a lifetime practice now. Fairly early on, I was like, oh, I'm going to need dance classes when I leave here. I'm going to need singing lessons when I leave here. This is not like I'm walking into this moment and I will spend a year training and then I'm fixed, finished, polished, and ready to go. I'm going to need these lessons for every character, for every role, for every new opportunity I get given. I'm going to want to learn to use my voice in a way that's appropriate for that role. I'm going to want to refresh what I think about approaches to text. I'm going to need to go to dance classes because if I don't maintain it once I leave, all of that hard work is going to easily be replaced by a lifetime of habits. I noticed it when I sang Anthem the other week. I think I mentioned it already, but in one class, I sang a song from Chess that I've been singing my whole life. I worked on it all week. We really took steps to make sure I was opening my voice and my larynx and all that stuff. And then just as soon as I got to singing, all of that disappeared. If I don't maintain this once I leave this course, a lifetime of habit is going to take over. And actually, when I sit down and I think about it like that, when I imagine my future self going to a dance class or having a singing lesson or picking up a new book about acting theory and reading about different exercises that I could try, I start thinking about that being my life's work. And that is such a joy. Whenever one of our teachers, Merrin, he refers to what we're doing as the work, and I get a little bit of a tingle because it will be. This is, if I'm lucky and if I commit and if I work hard, this is going to be my life's work. This is the career I'm choosing for myself. And that's what I always wanted. And it's so wild to think about that in comparison to when I was younger and I would make excuses for why I didn't want to go to drama school. And one of the key things was I was convinced that they would take this thing I love so seriously that it would remove the joy and the fun from it. And maybe it's just that in the past 10, 15 years, actor training has been forced into a change because there were some really horrid practices. Or maybe it's that it's the course, or maybe that it's these particular teachers, or maybe it's my head is in a different place now than it was 15 years ago. More likely, it's a cocktail of all of those things. But every single time they take this thing seriously, I love it even harder, do you know? So what a lovely thing to feel. What have I learned from these 6 weeks? I've learned that I am more tenacious and more driven than I thought I was. I've learned that I wasn't lazy in my life. Sometimes things are just hard. I've learned that I'm stronger than I thought I was. And I've learned that when the going gets tough, I have to let it in a little bit. I have to speak it sometimes. I have to say the words. But I have also learned that in every day when you're doing something that you love, no matter how hard it is possible to take a second and find a bit of joy somewhere. And it's actually more important that you do find those bits of joy because no one ever said this was going to be easy. But no one ever also said it was going to be this brilliant. And I've had to reflect on that and think about it. And even in my most achy day, even in my most, I don't think I'm cut out for this moment, I sort of take a breath and I go again. And that's when I pick up the step. Or that's when I walk into a class and sing the song that I have learned that week, and my classmates look at me and they go, wow, the improvement in you from week one is so noticeable, or these little tricks that you've done have really opened up all these different possibilities for you to explore within your craft. And it is my craft, and I get to explore it. That's just a little bit of a reflection I've had. Let me know how that kind of thing works for you. Whatever your practice is, whatever your life's work is, I feel like it requires a level of reflection. How do you like to reflect? Do you journal? I've tried to journal. It sort of works for me. Sometimes it doesn't. This is my journal. Tell me about your life. Tell me what you're thinking about. Also, tell me what you want me to bake next. Look after yourselves and each other, and I will see you next time. I'm going to go to a hot tub. I'll be honest. When I sit down and think about it, my left hip has earned this, so I shall not be judged for it. Bubble away.